this week. I'll read a couple things here from the article that I read. We have Alberta Premier Danielle Smith met with Trump at Mar-a-Lago, and she believes, she came back and said she believes the threats of 25% across the board are real. And the impact of this, as predicted, I don't have the Economist written down here, but we can put it in the notes for the show. Across the board, 25% U.S. tariffs, along with proportional retaliatory tariffs, would reduce Canada's exports and cause its GDP to fall to 2.5% peak to trough by early 2026, predicts Oxford economists. Oh, there you go. Inflation would surge to 7.2 by mid-2025, and 150,000 layoffs would lift the unemployment rate to 7.9% by year end. I mean, that sounds abysmal. I mean, we're talking, potential stagflation, where we're going to be stuck with high interest rates and high prices, and they're predicting negative 6% GDP. So the lowest GDP we've had in the last sort of 30 years, more than that, like 40 years, was during the first year of the pandemic, when production and everything halted and
halt. Yeah.
Right. And so it's rebounded since that, but then minus 6%. This is a prediction, and it's a big if, and it's a big what if, if the stable genius in the United States actually pulls the trigger on this 25% across the board tariff, which we haven't seen in our lifetime. I don't know that Canada's ever seen sort of a massive sort of trade war like that with the United States. But if the worst things happen and our GDP is negative 6%, that will essentially be, other than that blip for the first year of COVID, the worst GDP that Canada's seen in our lifetimes.
I mean, it's all on the table at this point. I also heard he's now considering every month to ratchet up the tariffs by 2 to 3% every month. So we get to 25% by the end of the year, and that's to reduce the impact of inflation. Sounds like, I read this morning, sounds like economic waterboarding, essentially, like it's a little bit at a time.
It's a great term. Yeah. We should get that tattooed on your arm, economic waterboarding.
Yeah. And depending on how bad these things get, all bets are off in terms of housing, in terms of our GDP, in terms of unemployment, what happens with our real estate. If inflation if inflation goes up and we're in stagflation, the Bank of Canada has to, I mean, they're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
And there's no playbook to get out of stagflation.
But it should end quickly, right? Like, how long do we go on? Do we spend all 4 years of the Trump administration with 25% tariffs? That seems very unlikely, because of the pain it would also cause the U.S.
For sure economy. That it would cause pain in the U.S. And so I don't know if Trump's economic advisors, I don't know who that is, Elon Musk or somebody, should know better. If they're highly qualified people, should understand the impact that it would cause to the United States and to their economy. But unfortunately, I haven't read a whole lot of articles pointing out how big of an impact that this would have on the U.S. So I think that as you start to factor in more and more factors, this thing gets confusing. We're looking at the mathematical phenomenon, or the three-body equation, or the three-body problem. Sorry, and it gets so convoluted that I'm not going to make any massive predictions or base my financial future on that. But it's something to look out for.
Well, the two biggest things, our biggest export to the U.S. is oil. And if they're not buying our oil, they have to buy it from other less stable sources.
Sure.
Venezuela, Saudi Arabia. I don't even think they would ship it over here. But if they're not, they rely on our oil, they rely on our lumber. And so if they're trying to lower the cost of groceries and of transportation, of industry down there, making the U.S. population spend 25% more on on lumber and oil doesn't seem like the way to do it. And so everything
Specifically
gets more
with
expensive.
Russia, we're that being out of the equation for purchasing, because they sold oil and gas, relatively affordable for years, but obviously with their international conflict and their invasion of the
Yeah.
Ukraine, so nobody's
You
going to buy
can't
their
tell me
oil.
they're not going to buy Russian oil. Like they're going to buy Venezuelan oil, like from a communist
Right. Yeah.
country. Like that seems ridiculous to me.
It
Like,
does. It seems ridiculous. It seems far fetched. I mean, everybody's scrambling, and the premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, was. I think she went down there to plead with Trump to say, "Hey, please exclude our oil from this," and he basically said, "No way."
yeah,
Meanwhile, here in Ontario, Premier Doug Ford is saying, "Now we'll go to war.
yeah,
we'll
let's
we'll
go.
have we'll have an energy war with the United States." And
Yeah.
well, I mean, that sounds ridiculous too. Like, and with our pro-road government, like our heads should be spinning, and they certainly are spinning, because we're not quite sure who's running the ship. And to be
Well, it
honest,
seems like it's status quo in terms of the transition. They've got people in place. I know some of the leaders, liberal cabinet members who maybe were up for liberal leadership, are not putting their hat in the ring because of everything that's happening in
it's a
their day to
dumpster
day.
fire over there at the
Yeah,
Liberal Party.
well, and yeah, for sure. But the people that are in charge of the US transition, they're not also saying, okay, I want to be prime minister now, right?
Sure.
They're focused on the US transition. So hopefully we get, it went fairly well. I mean, I think it went fairly well last time that Trump was in power and he imposed tariffs and he wanted to, he tore up the free trade agreement. I think
Yeah,
we
you
did
wrote a new
fairly well.
one.
Like we held
Yeah.
our ground, and I don't. So I'm less worried about that. I think if we were just completely going to be um uh bamboozled by him and railroaded, then I'd be worried about it. But I think that we're in a position, we have some ammo to use to fight back. I don't think we're completely weaklings in this. Obviously, much smaller economy, but they rely on us.
Sure, they do, and we rely on our tremendous history of trade partnership. They're our biggest trade partner, and they will most likely remain our biggest trade partner. And hopefully, with their new administration, and then with our eventual new administration, that there's some cohesion there, and that we get it figured out. But I'm not sure that I have a ton of faith in our new administration yet, because it seems like the leader of the Conservative Party right now is content to sit back and watch it burn, so that he can say, "Hey, it wasn't my fault. Look how bad they did."
Right.
I would like him to step up and be a little bit more vocal and be a little bit more active. If he's going to be the next leader, start working on solving this problem now publicly.
I, yeah. Well, what tools does he have to do that? I mean, as the opposition leader, can he really? He's just doing the blame game to get elected. I think if the roles were reversed, the liberals would be saying the same thing. It's about the conservatives. Conservatives are doing the same about the liberals. I don't have a lot of faith in Polyev to be that guy. I know people love him and he's the new guy. I just don't know. I don't know what kind of background he has to be able to solve these sort of problems as a lifelong politician.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess and I completely understand that, and there's a political game being played. I would like to see finally somebody step up and be an adult in the room and say, "Hey, we need cohesion now."
Yeah.
If I were him, or if I were wearing his shoes, I would think, not arrogantly, I would think that I have this next election won, so why keep um, with the same rhetoric of, "Look how terrible this guy did." People already
Yeah,
have that opinion. People already, I
for
would say,
sure.
air quotes, know that. So maybe it's time somebody's got to step up and try to pull this country together. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it seems like we're trying to do it. Like, I mean, Trudeau did go down to Mar-a-Lago. Danielle Smith went down. Chrétien's talking. Harper's talking. Um, I miss somebody. Ford went on CNN.
Ford did a little
or
media
Fox
tour.
News.
Yeah.
So it seems like we're putting, Team Canada is fighting back. We're extending the olive branch. We're talking about, let's keep this a good relationship. But I just don't think he's got anybody on his team that's going to push back on his ideas like he did in the first administration.
Yeah.